Following a week clouded by fear, grief, and unanswered questions, we finally saw a silver lining. 38 worshippers abducted in Kwara State have been rescued. And in Niger State, we hear that 51 students from St. Mary's Catholic School managed to escape the captors. It's a glimmer of hope in what has been one of the darkest chapters of school abductions this year. But even in these moments of relief, the nation is left grappling with uncomfortable questions. President Tinubu, who cancelled his G20 trip to coordinate security operations, says he will not relent, reassuring Nigerians that every citizen has the right to safety. Yet as rescues are announced, many ask, where are the arrests? Were there negotiations? And how sustainable is a rescue without justice? Yesterday, the president ordered the withdrawal of police officers from VIP security duties, insisting the return to core policing roles. VIPs who require escort will now rely on the NSCDC. At the same time, the federal government says it will recruit 30,000 new police officers to boost presence in underserved communities. And all of this comes as a high-level Nigerian delegation returned from Washington with reported renewed U.S. commitments. We're hearing that we're likely going to see enhanced intelligence sharing, quicker defense equipment approvals, and deeper cooperation to counter violent extremism. But in the midst of all these efforts, communities still shut down schools out of fear, and critics say that doing so signals an uncomfortable truth. Are we gradually conceding territory to non-state actors? To unpack all of this and help us make sense of the realities behind the headlines, Dr. Kabiru Adamu is Managing Director of Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited. He joins me on the program this evening. Dr. Adamu, thank you for joining us on Beyond the Headlines. 38 worshippers rescued, 51 students escaped, yet we've heard nothing about arrests. From a security intelligence standpoint, what does a rescue without arrest really mean?
It simply casts doubt on whether it was a rescue or it was a release. It is expected that if it was a rescue, it would be done under very difficult circumstances where probably there will be an exchange of gunfire and the likelihood of the loss of life on both sides, on the sides of probably the victims, God forbid, as well as the side of the perpetrators. It is also likely that some of those who went for the rescue would be injured. It's also very likely that footages will be captured of such a rape. So the fact that none of this has emerged, points to the fact that perhaps it wasn't a rescue, it was a release. Irrespective of what it was, the fact that the victims have come out alive and they've reunited with their families. We've seen footages of celebrations by members of the community, Eriku, where it happened. I think that's something to be happy about. Yes, there will be consequence if it was indeed a release and not a rescue. If it was a release, it's likely that some form of ransom, whether financial or political ransom, was paid. And as an expert, I know that means these groups have been incentivized. They would now continue to carry out such attacks. So those are the kind of concerns that we have. But at the moment, like I said, there are doubts about whether it was actually a release or a rescue.
Well, the release is no doubt a big relief for many Nigerians, hoping that the children or the students also in Kebbi and Niger will return to their families very soon. But there are concerns about sustainability, as you've highlighted. How sustainable is a rescue without justice model, and precisely what would you consider the best practice model for Nigeria at this time?
So at the beginning of the Bola Tinubu administration, I remember he wrote, I think it was an op-ed or just an article in Times magazine. And it's instructive, that article. In that article, the president was very emphatic by stating Nigeria's position on non-payment of ransom. The National Security Advisor followed that piece written by Mr. President when he also, on at least 2 occasions, emphatically stated Nigeria's position or the government's position on non-payment of ransom. And I must say that this aligns with provisions of the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act, which is also very clear about Nigeria's position on non-payment of ransom. So I would say that the fact that today, you probably have seen the report written by SBM Intelligence, where they, provided evidence to show that humongous sums of money are being paid as ransom, and that an industry, as it were, is flourishing for kidnap for ransom in Nigeria. An industry that has different layers, that within that ecospace, you have different actors who are supporting that industry. Some of those actors are official actors. Some of the actors are within the financial systems. There are banks, fintechs, and more conventional banks, where today the kidnappers ask for those ransom to be paid. It's paid, and they are able to withdraw and use it. Sometimes this money is withdrawn in cash. It's paid to them. So the point I'm trying to make is an industry exists in spite of this presidential position on the non-payment of ransom. So I'm hoping that if it was indeed a release or whatever, whether it was a rescue, that the deterrence element that should exist within our legal system, which should be activated, whether it was rescue or release. In today's world, there is enough technology to allow us to track and make sure that whoever collects that money does not leave to spend that money. If we have to pay to release our...
Yes. Let us talk about technology for a bit, because perhaps the update on all of the things we've reeled out is the effrontery with which these bandits now display their act online. You go to TikTok to see them brag, you see them engage viewers, you see them drop comments. How difficult is it to use that kind of technology? Because we've seen EFCC being able to track cyber criminals. We've seen law enforcement agents use intelligence to track people down. Is it still guerrilla warfare if we see them online and we still cannot track them?
No, I'm sorry to say it's an indication of the impunity within our security sector. Tracking individuals online in the digital space is extremely easy. First off, every device that they are using has a signature. The platform that they are using has credentials that you can use to track, even if it's not their own and they're using someone else's own. You can create a social web that will allow you to eventually identify who they are. So if it's politically expedient to track them and to arrest them and to try them, it will be done. But I think for some odd reasons at the moment, because of the impunity that exists within the security sector, that is not being done at the moment. I mean, today, the social media, there was a viral post by a young bandit who was, in simple terms, challenging the supremacy of the Nigerian state, its sovereignty, saying some very stupid things, and it went viral. I believe that by now that young man should have been arrested and a lesson taught to his peers who would want to follow him. But because over time we've not done that, I mean, once you pick TikTok, the number of displays you would see, brazen displays by these criminals, is shocking. And sometimes, when I speak to my friends from across the world, they ask the question that where are Nigeria's security organizations? And I must say, it's not as if we lack the presence of security departments. I keep on saying we have up to 42 of them, 29 primary ones, then an additional 14 that are supporting these 29 primary ones. And they have the capacity to track these things. So again, if it's politically expedient and we break that impunity, they will start tracking them, and we see a reduction in this brazen criminality that we're seeing today.
In short, you're saying that we should question our security infrastructure as it is currently constituted if we find these bandits online and we can't track them. I'd like us to move...
let me clarify that, Nife.
Yes.
I'm not saying we should question the infrastructure. I believe the infrastructure has enough capability to do it, but it's not the impunity that exists within the this sector is stopping that from happening. I mean, I'm mindful of the fact that this is a public forum. Recently, a young man posted about a coup in Port Harcourt. How long did it take the security organizations to go after him and track him? Not very long. So they can use the same technology and track these bad guys. It's the same technology that they used in tracking that man that they could have used in tracking these terrible monsters who are doing very dastardly things to our
Precisely, who should we hold responsible for this impunity?
So the structure of the national security enterprise has different elements. There are the coordinating elements. Now, the coordinating elements are the ones that should have a level of responsibility in terms of organizing and managing the activities of the security sector. So that's the first level of responsibility. The various ministers, the national security advisor, and then underneath them you have the tactical and operational heads, the service chiefs, the GOCs, name them. So that's how it goes. But then the beauty of our democracy is that all of these elements are within the executive arm of government. Where we're seeing this type of failure, then the National Assembly should have been putting pressure on the executive arm of government through legislative instruments, their oversight functions through motions, and sometimes even congressional hearings like what we see in the United States. Those are ways that the democratic system of government has allowed the legislature to put pressure on the executive arm. So when you ask me who should, these are the various elements that should be doing it. Unfortunately, in 2025, we're not seeing any of these elements putting that kind of level of accountability on our security sector.
And you know that the lawmakers are now also objects of the public outcry, especially following the public hearing we saw at the U.S. Congress. Let's take a short break, Dr. Adamu, and we'll be right back. Dr. Kabiru Adamu, thank you for staying the course on the program. Mr. President has now ordered the withdrawal of police officers attached to VIPs. From your experience, how much policing manpower do VIP escorts consume? We're hearing perhaps over 100,000. Do you think that this directive can meaningfully improve community level security?
Yeah, so let me start by saying that this is not the first time, unfortunately, that we're seeing this renewed vigor to implement this policy. It's been repeated so many times, and I do pray that Mr. President, has the courage to pull this through, because it's going to be resisted by the political class in particular. It is also going to be resisted by the police themselves. And so Mr. President will have to put his foot on the ground, and not just put it on the ground, put it like concretely on the ground for this policy to happen. I'm not kidding myself. I'm aware of that. Now, if it does happen, the most recent report, unfortunately, it was a report written not by a Nigerian body, but by a UK body, the EU Commission, I think, on Asylum. It released a report about 2-3 weeks ago, where it indicated that data it has gathered shows that there are about 100,000 police personnel involved in this VIP protection scheme. So if we go by that number, it means that about 100,000 personnel will be withdrawn. I do not think we can get up to that 100,000, because some of these individuals are actually entitled. I will give you an example. Police officers of a certain rank are entitled to protection, and so they will have orderlies deployed with them. Certain public office holders are also entitled. Mr. President's directive was not very clear whether it would affect those constitutionally entitled individuals. So maybe if we are lucky, we get around 50,000 or 60,000, it would definitely help. It would boost the number of police that are deployed. But more than that, I'm urging Mr. President to look at other areas. We have about 8 policing organizations currently existing in Nigeria. The Nigeria Police Force itself, the road safety, name them, about 8 of them. So one of the best things that Mr. President can do is to instruct a better synergy between these eight, where they work together to serve policing function. It's going to be a little bit difficult because they are spread across different ministries. You have some under the Ministry of Interior, some under the Ministry of Police Affairs, and then some directly reporting to the presidency. So I'm not sure, but if Mr. President makes an intentional directive for synergy between all of them, and then the office of the SGF looks closely at that, then maybe we will see an improvement in policing. The second thing is the policing method itself. Sometimes all you need to do is sit, let's say, along the airport route to Abuja, and then you count the number of VIP, air convoys with police escorts that will be going to the airport. But then I now wonder, what if we just deploy a team of policemen along that route to provide policing functions and reduce the need for our VIPs to travel with convoy? And in today's world, if we marry technology and personnel, human beings, as well as systems, then we'll be able to achieve that. So we also need to look at the method of policing. It will help reduce the number of personnel that we deploy. So I'm hoping again, Mr. President will look at that particular area. And then, of course, lastly, is to enhance synergy between the various security agencies so that we now see a need for reduction in terms of deployment of police personnel. The SSS can play a role in certain instances. The military can play a role depending on what the threat factor is. And then the NSCDC can also play a role depending on. So all of that would help reduce the need for the number of personnel that we have at the moment.
You know that for years, VIP security has been a shadow economy within policing. So we definitely foresee some form of resistance, sabotage, or even implementation challenges within the system. Like you said, we probably will see how this presidential order will play out in the coming days. But do the NSCDC have the numbers, the kind of training and asset capacity to take on VIP protection at scale?
So this is one of the reasons for the pushback when this policy was initially mooted. It's contained in the Renewed Hope agenda. It's contained in the ministerial briefings and, of course, in the performance bond that the ministers signed with Mr. President. And at that time, there was a pushback, mainly because the recipients of the service would not be comfortable with the civil defense for a lot of reasons. But I mean, Rome was not built in a day. I believe that between the time that this policy was mooted in May 2023 and now, if the NSCDC would have been better prepared to handle that function. And maybe there will be mistakes here and there, but then those mistakes will be corrected. Point is, Nigerians, ordinary Nigerians, citizens, you and I, need improved policing. And this is one of the means to serve the ordinary Nigerian. And I must commend Mr. President. But again, like I said, he needs to put his foot on the ground concretely to ensure that the policy is implemented. And in the meantime, I am hoping that the civil defense would start to increase its capability for protective duties. We're already doing some elements of protective duty in certain areas, but then it would need to definitely improve its capacity through training, through equipment, through recruiting the right type of personnel that are ideal for protective duties.
Some have said perhaps it's also about time to arm our private security sector. It's better to have guns in the hands of those trained to do it before Nigerians consider self-defense as a viable alternative. But does a centralized force still, make sense in a country where threats are hyper-local, terrains are different, and response times depend on who controls resources? Is reform even possible without first decentralizing security?
So, I hear this myth about a centralized policing system, and I think we need to disaggregate that myth so that we understand clearly what we're talking about. What the policing system in Nigeria is one of the most decentralized. Yes, the decision making is at the center within the headquarters of Nigeria Police Force. But remember that there is no local government that you go to in Nigeria out of the 774 that you would not see a police division, and that has a reasonable element of ability to protect. It's also very interesting and ironic that we've almost perfected the community policing model that was introduced a couple of years ago. The policy is there. The recruitment of the constables, constabularies rather, has been done. The establishment of the policing committees has also been done. In some locations, they sit regularly. So I think we need to be very careful when we assume, for instance, that policing is so centralized that there are no elements of it at the subnational level. There are elements of it. Yes, the federal constitution recognizes a federal policing system, but that does not mean that federal policing system does not have components. Now, to answer your question, I am a component of decentralization of security. But what does decentralization of security mean? Does it mean, for instance, a replication of this very uncomfortable system that we have at the moment, where we now create another policing system at the subnational level that is also balkanized in the manner that the federal one has been balkanized? I don't think that would augur well for us. So I am of the view that we should first define what we want as policing. Do I want a police system like what I experienced in Europe, where on a particular day, the road was blocked and we could not find a way to pass, and then from nowhere, a police vehicle appeared and opened an avenue for us to pass? That is a functional policing system that is conscious of my need as a Nigerian. And that's the kind of policing system I want. If that policing system is created at the federal level, then recreated at the state level, I'll be extremely happy. But if what we have at the moment is an extractive policing system, that if once I see a policeman in front of me, I'm thinking of how much he's going to extort from me, and then we replicate that at the state level, I don't think that will serve our purposes. So let's take a moment to appreciate what we mean as Nigerians. What type of policing system do we want? Correct it, perfect it, and then we can recreate a meaningful, functional system at the state level, and in fact, possibly even at the local government level. I don't see anything wrong even creating it in subsets, in communities, in schools, as an example. The banks that need some form of protection, there's nothing wrong with giving them the proprietary license to recreate that. So I think that's more important actually than the decentralization, as it were.
We have just about 2 more minutes to go, but I want to get your reaction on the recent conversation. We heard that the NSA led a high-level delegation to Washington. The U.S. has now pledged enhanced intelligence support, expedited defense equipment, and excess defense articles. But what practical impact should Nigerians expect in the short term? Do you think that that meeting also was able to convince the U.S. otherwise, especially with the allegations of genocide in Nigeria? From your understanding, how much did those narratives affect our international relations and military cooperation?
Unfortunately, I don't think it affected it that much, for the simple reason that what happened was more a security delegation. What led to this is a diplomatic spat. The designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern is a presidential directive, of course, with the endorsement of the Congress, which is where it's likely to happen. It hasn't happened yet. And then with the resolutions that have been submitted to Congress, such as the HR 860 that is currently being considered, the delegation did not touch on any aspects of this. Yes, intelligence liaison between Nigeria and the US, defense agreement. These are not new things. Anyone who knows what is going on within our security sector knows that we already have that in place. We have an intelligence liaison with the Americans. We have a defense kind of cooperation agreement with them. So frankly, this is nothing new. I'm hoping that we'll sit back as a country to fix our home in order. We didn't do that before that delegation traveled to the US. In fact, while they were out there, all the incidents that you mentioned happened. The one in Cape Kevy, the one in Niger, and then, of course, the one in Kwara State. So I was at a loss at what they were going to tell the Americans. We need to fix our home front, make sure we have an agreement. I can quickly mention the types of agreements that we need to have. All of society approach, the all of government approach, all of nation, and then all of nations approach to security, so that we have a unified system for addressing our security challenges before we now go to the outside world to tell them this is what we need from you in terms of partnership.
Good place to leave it. Dr. Kabiru Adamu, thank you so much for joining us on the program this evening.